Hello, everybody. Welcome. Getting things set up over here. How's everybody? Hi, Nicole. How are you? You working? I hope your work goes good today. Hello, everyone. How are you? Where are you joining us from? I'm just getting everything set up. We're here on YouTube and TikTok, and today we're going to be talking about spiritual gifts. And we are post-eclipse, and we're in a powerful energy right now. And so I wanted to hop in and say hello and see how everybody's doing. Hi, Christy. How are you? How are you doing now that we are past our first eclipse? Lots of things are being revealed. Hello, a beautiful journey with Abe. How are you? So today we're going to talk about spiritual gifts and developing them and Meditation Monday. And last week we talked about the third eye and the third eye awakening. And a lot of questions came up after, and the sessions that were booked were about, how do I know I'm supposed to develop my spiritual gifts? I think the number one question I get from people all the time is, do I have spiritual gifts? And if so, what am I supposed to do with them? And the first answer is that when you have spiritual gifts, you will know. You will know because it's something that awakens with you, it turns on within you, and you can't turn it off. That's the first thing, is that when you're starting to have spiritual gifts awaken, then it's something that turns on that you can't turn off. And so for today's live, what I wanted to talk about are what are the symptoms of spiritual awakening, and when you are being called to be a spiritual healer or to actively do something with your spiritual gifts. So this live is for people who are in that space of, I think my third eye is awakening. I think I have clairsentience or clairvoyance or something, but I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do with this. And the majority of people that I actually see, they have it, but they're afraid of it. So that's the one thing about when you have spiritual gifts awakening, is that you can't fear your gift, or it will create more anxiety, more depression, more sadness, more confusion, more doubt and chaos. So the first thing we always want to work with is really embracing your spiritual gifts, understanding what they are and how to live with them, how to have a normal, healthy, functioning life when you have spiritual gifts awakening. Because at some point your spiritual gifts will turn on. If they weren't cultivated and developed through childhood, they usually will reemerge, or as I've talked about in previous videos, they will, be dormant through childhood. And then at some point in your life, they will awaken, especially after the death of someone or a traumatic incident or something that triggers the event. Or sometimes it's just the timing in your destiny that it's time for you to awaken. Okay, so sorry, I gotta get my cat. Here's Peaky Bee. Hey, hi. Saying hi to everybody. This is my kitty. This is Peaky Bee. And she's been with me from the very beginning. She showed up at my door and she came and she was like on the journey. She's very spiritual too. She loves healing and rocks and, herbs and all that good stuff. So how's everybody today? How was your week? How are you now post eclipse? Let's do a check-in. Where are you joining from? Say hi. Join in. Oh, I have to turn on my YouTube. Hold on 1 second. Let me just pop into my meditation on here. Everybody today, how was sorry. All right, so we're on YouTube and we're on TikTok. Hi, Cami, how are you doing? How are you post eclipse? We just had a very powerful eclipse. Did everybody feel that eclipse energy? You've been tired, starting to get energy back now and completing project. Oh, good, Christy. Hi from Tarpon Springs, Florida, where it's cold again. Yeah, it just got cold here in Colorado too. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. Hello. Hi, Nick Loven. How are you? So did anybody feel that eclipse that came in? You know, when they have an eclipse, it means that we're resetting, we're restarting. That last eclipse was actually a weird eclipse because it was a hybrid eclipse. So it wasn't a partial, it wasn't it went through all the stages of the eclipse. So pretty intense. You were tired. Not as tired now. Good. Eclipses can drain you. It's just kind of like a full moon, new moon thing. And it depends on where you are. So it amplifies your energy. Like we talked about last week, you know, with the third eye awakening, that's what an eclipse is too, is it amplifies where you are. So it kind of shows you, oh, okay, maybe I was tired. Oh, now I'm really tired. That kind of thing. Is it all done now? Yeah, the eclipse, we're out of the eclipse. We will have more eclipses in May. May is going to be a very transformational month because we have that very powerful moon coming up. The Waysock moon is coming up, and we have the burgeoning of spring. So last week I talked about how we were in baby spring and we're just getting those, you know, things cleared out. We're clearing the field. We were shedding all the old stuff. And now we're getting into the real work of spring, which is preparing the land for the next stages of our life. And this last eclipse was about what's coming for not only this year, but for many years to come. For some of you, it's going to be like life-changing events happening at this moment in time. This year, you're going to be, you know, marrying, divorcing, having children, losing children. You know, there's just going to be every extreme you can think about. And so what we always say about with eclipses is that you're not supposed to really do anything during an eclipse. You're supposed to just settle and, you know, chill. You're supposed to be in your house. You're not supposed to really be doing a whole lot. And you're supposed to be a time of resetting your mind, body, and spirit. And those 3 days of the eclipse, before the eclipse, during the eclipse, and after the eclipse are very important for you to go kind of into like a turtle mode where you pop your head back into your shell and you're in self-protection mode because your energy is very vulnerable at that time. And what the ancestors said is that during the eclipses, it can either lead you to your greatest fortune or misfortune. And that's why you don't want to be doing too much activity during the eclipse. So eclipses are very intense. They are resets, they are life-changing, and they are meant to help you catapult to the next star, as they say, or the next energy or the next place in your life. You definitely felt it. You felt good during day of and after the eclipse. The last few days is when I started to get tired. Yeah, your body is probably still absorbing and integrating those energies. Yeah, sometimes you feel more wired during an eclipse, and sometimes you feel more tired. It just depends on where you were and what the eclipse is drawing out of you. You've been feeling a lot of energies around your body and head. Yeah, that can happen too. You can go through like activations and, you know, energy downloads and things that are awakening within your body. Also, things that happen during the eclipse is like revelations about your life, about where you are, about what's coming in your life. Oh, no, April 25th is way past the eclipse. We're past the eclipse date, surgery and all that is okay. We are in, from our astrology friends, we are in a Mercury retrograde. So you might expect delays or things like that. But what I always say about Mercury retrograde is that Mercury retrograde is building the energy for you to catapult, to go farther into the next energy. So Mercury retrograde, I don't believe in it being like a negative thing or like a don't do stuff, because you still have to live your life. You can't, your surgery, they have, a calendar set for sometimes weeks, months, and it took you a long time to get that date. And so now you just have trust and faith and know that, that's the date that you were meant to be in that space, and that the spirits will help you. And you can do whatever you want to do in order to make that the best experience you can make it. But, we can't stop our life because Mercury went into retrograde. Sorry. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I try not to be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid. Surgery in general is nerve-wracking. So just go in there with peace and clarity, meditate, pray, and know that you'll be okay. Do a spirit feast if you want to, light a candle, ask for extra prayers from your friends and family, but just ultimately, you have to do it, right? And you're going to feel better after. So, hi, Sylvia. Hi, Ren. There's just nothing we can do. Sometimes in our life, we have to face those things. Isn't that funny? I'm talking about Mercury, and it says Mercury, not retrograde. It says hello. I love that. Talking about Mercury retrograde, it says Mercury is not retrograde. I love it. You popped in right at the right time there. You are so right. Thank you for your words. That helps so much. Yeah. We'll be praying for you, because the surgery, health stuff, love stuff, relationships. I think the thing most people really obsess about is relationships. That's the thing I see the most of. Through the 20 years of doing readings for people, the one thing I know that can drive people to madness is their relationships. Is so-and-so going to call me? Is so-and-so going to do this? So-and-so going to blah, blah, what, so all that stuff. So-and-sos. The so-and-sos will drive you crazy. Anyway, so today I wanted to talk about spiritual developing your gifts, post eclipse. I think a lot of the next things I'm going to be talking about is really how to integrate and bring in these energies in your body. A lot of people are going through spiritual awakenings and third eye awakenings, and things are turning on and off and all around. And so we have to settle these energies. And that's why I'm doing the Meditation Monday. I realized during the eclipse, I was trying to control everything too much, overanalyzing. Yes, that can that can be a real bummer in our life, right? No, but that's what I mean about the eclipses. They draw out things that we are repressing or putting under the rug or not willing to look at, so that we have to look at them. And that's why the ancestors said they will either bring you to your greatest fortune or misfortune, depending on where you are. And that is all about you. So I wanted to talk about today, like, we're having spiritual awakening. So who in this chat feels like they're going through a spiritual awakening, or that they have gifts that are turning on and they want to know more about that? That's what we're talking about today. You? Okay. Let's like Satake. What's that? Satake? Sorry. 22. Petticoat fever. Okay, everybody, it happened last year. Yes, want to step into developing gifts. I am. Okay, good. I'm Ren. Oh, Ren. Okay, Ren. Sorry. I have this tiny screen that I'm trying to read on. Okay, good. So we got the right group today. And so if you go to my website, I have spiritual training. And when on the spiritual training, I talk about what are some of the signs. These are since ancient times of people who are called to not only use their gifts. Everybody has intuition. Everybody has these different clairs that everybody talks about: clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairaudience, all the clairs, right? And I have little videos on those. And everybody has those to some degree. Okay. So everybody has that. And some of us have it stronger and are called to develop it to be in service to others. Okay, because these gifts will always serve you, because that's why we're given these gifts. Like, in the Dene tradition, we say you're 5-finger being. So you have 5 fingers, okay? And those are your 5 senses. But then you also have these spaces in between that are also your 5 senses, but they're your spiritual senses, right? The ability to see, to feel, to taste, to smell, to, hear. So all those 5 senses that you have in the physical world, you also have in the spiritual world. You have those same 5 senses. And that's what in modern terms, they call those clairsentience, clair abilities: clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairaudience, clairgustance. You have all of those too. And that's what they were talking about with that. So the 5-fingered being. So everybody's a 5-fingered being. However, some people are called to develop those gifts, those talents, and in service to healing and helping others. And I think in this time and age, because of things like this technology, we are now in a very interesting position, because these gifts are now seen in the public more than in times past. In times past, when you were called to be a healer, it was about your destiny. And your destiny would most definitely lead you to the places and spaces that you needed to go to develop your gifts. Like if you were, had a dream as a child, or somebody in the tribe had a dream, or there were gifts that were recognized by the elders and the medicine people, they would immediately know, oh, okay, this person is destined to be a healer. And now we have to take them to this place, to the elders who will teach them and help them cultivate that gift. But in this time and age, we don't live in tribal societies. We're in a modern society. And we are now kind of in this weird place where people are struggling because they are having these spiritual awakenings and these spiritual gifts, and they don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And then we have all this variety, like a la carte teachings, that say, okay, well, this is the right way. Oh, no, this is the right way. Oh, no, this is the right way. Oh, no, this is the right way. And then it's all scrambled up, and a lot of people are in chaos and confusion. So now we have to go back to the basics. That's why I start with meditation, because meditation is the foundation of developing everything. Okay. Do you think we can get back to tribal ways? No. No. It would take too much change in our society for us to go back to a tribal society. Even when you're born into a tribal society, it's very hard in this modern age to stay in the tribal society. You would have to have a complete collapse of everything in our society, because to live in a tribal society, you have to eliminate selfishness and greed. To live in a truly tribal society, and that's why when you look at all indigenous cultures, that the 2 things that are looked down upon, like really looked down upon, are selfishness and greed. When you have selfishness and greed, you can't be in a tribal society, because everything is about community, and everything is about what's your gift, what's my gift, and we trade, and we all contribute to the whole of everything and everyone. And in order to really contribute to the whole of everyone and everything, it means that you have to eliminate your personal wants and your personal desires, because a lot of times those things will conflict with what the tribe actually needs to survive. Now, I think we can eliminate, a lot of selfishness and greed and a lot of those lower things like ignorance and things within ourselves. And that's what meditation and a spiritual practice will help you do. But in order to really go back to the tribe, that's why all of our rituals and practices and ceremonies and everything that's in a tribal setting is about giving to the other. It's about contributing. It's about eliminating your personal wants and needs and desires for the good of everybody. And, that sounds really easy to do when you just say it, but in reality, it's a very hard practice. And that's why they had rituals and ceremonies and special things that you had to do since childhood to help you to cultivate kindness and compassion and helpfulness and generosity, because those are the keys to a healthy tribe. When we start breaking those things down, that's when the tribes start breaking down, because when we start wanting what we want over what others need and want is no longer tribal. It's no longer community-based. It's ego-based. It's I-based. And that's why there's so many examples of ceremonies and rituals, and even the powwows are all centered around this philosophy of generosity, giving back. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a balance happening in the world. I don't think we're going to completely collapse everything, but I think there's going to be a balance for sure. When you start having, the economic breakdowns, and people have to let go of consumerism and greed, then we're going to have to see more community come together. And I think you're seeing pockets of it. And I think that's a good thing to happen. Okay, so let's go back to our topic. So when you're being called to develop your spiritual gifts, they turn on like a light. And they like a dimmer light. Let's think of a dimmer light. It goes just dim, dim, dim. They don't go like from 1 to 1,000 and stay to 1. You can have spiritual experiences that will take you from 1 to 1,000, but they'll take you back to 2. You won't go from 1 to 1,000 and, no. You have to work towards that. And so these are the things that I talk about in my spiritual training to give you a guide as to, am I being called to work as a healer, or am I being more called to just develop my gifts and to, use them for personal and, maybe the people that I influence. Now, the first thing about the steps from going from healer, from like a normal individual to healer, and this is like the roadmap, I guess. But most people don't follow this roadmap. But I want to emphasize this part, is that you can't just go from yourself to others. But that's not how the progression goes. The progression of healing goes first with yourself. You have to come to a place within yourself where you feel healed enough. I don't think you ever feel completely 100% healed unless you're fully enlightened, like the Buddha. But you have to not have so many triggers and shadows and selfishness, greed, ignorance, avarice, envy, jealousy, all that stuff has to be balanced in order for you to really start working with other people. Or else when you start working with people, you will constantly be triggered by your unhealed emotions and feelings and thoughts, and all that stuff will start coming out, and you won't go anywhere. You just won't, because every time somebody comes to you, you'll just be triggered up. However, when you get to a certain point in your healing and you've done enough shadow work, you will start to move into your family. And that's where a lot of people struggle, is the family part. I see a lot of healers and they're like, I hate my mom. I don't get along with my dad, my husband, my wife, my somebody, right? And then we know, okay, you got to do more family healing. Okay, so you go from the individual to the family, right? Especially those mom and dad triggers or brother and sister triggers, those things, they have to be healed, because as the healer of the family, it's first yourself, and then you move into your family. And then you'll start working with your family and healing those early childhood trauma, shadow work. You might do therapy, something, right? And then from there, you go to like your local community. Then you start seeing like healers after they feel like, they're building their spiritual power and energy. They start moving into their community. They start doing community volunteer work. They start doing community Reiki, acupuncture, shamanic healing, ceremonies, something in the community, right? They're starting to work with the community and they're healing their communities. And then if you make it through and this is your destiny, then you go to the world. Then, and now everybody can go straight to the world because we have this technology. But in traditional ways, that's the right way to go as a healer. First yourself, then your family, then your community, then the world. And then when you do it in that succession, when you get to the world stage, you're going to attract a lot more. You're going to have so much light and so many people attracted to you because you've done the work of healing. You've healed yourself, you've healed your family, you've healed your community. And then you can go and like your light will just emanate into the world. And those are the people that are revered. Those are like the Buddhas, the Jesuses, the ascended masters, because now their light has just irradiated so far and wide that it's ready for a world stage. And then people all over the world will be able to hear them because of their message, because their message is so clear, because they're emanating love that it can expand into all religions, all genders, all races, all economic classes. That's what they said about Buddha, is that Buddha, he could talk to anybody. He could talk to anybody and they could understand him clearly. He didn't talk too loud. He didn't talk too soft. He was just perfect in speech. And when you looked at him, he was emanating beautiful energy and he looked good. Like there's this whole thing about Buddha's features and how symmetrical they were and this and that and that. And it took many, many, many lifetimes for him to get that way. But he was ready for the world stage because he did all that meditation, all that prayer, all that good, sacrifice. He sacrificed his wealth and his, notoriety. He was supposed to be a king and he gave it all away so that he could serve humanity. And that's what we talk about when we talk about a world stage. Now, most of us probably will never get to the world stage. Some will, some won't. But it's not about how, that's ego. Ego wants fame. Ego wants, the recognition, so that's what you see a lot on this social media is like, look at me, I'm so this, I'm so that, I'm that. But that's not what we're talking about for a healer. For a healer, it's about emanating that healing energy that emanates through them so that people can feel that healing light, right? But it takes a process of going from self to family, to community, to the world, right? But we have to do that process so that we're ready for it. And it could be this lifetime, it could be another lifetime. It could be, tomorrow, I don't know. Because everybody's destiny is different. And that's another thing, is that it's all about your destiny. So that's why we can't compare ourselves to other people and what they're doing, because that's their destiny. What we have to step into is our destiny. What is my destiny? And am I in alignment with it? And that's what those cosmic alignments like eclipses and new moons and full moons and all these, alignments do for us, is that they tell us, where am I? And am I in alignment with my destiny? Because we're all born into different circumstances. We're all born with different gifts. We're all born here to shine our uniqueness. But if we're always trying to be something else or be somebody else, then we'll never get our chance to shine. We'll always be in somebody else's spotlight. So some of the things that can, tell you you're being called to develop a healing, gift, first and foremost, is that once it turns on, you can't turn it off. It's like one day you woke up and you saw spirits. It's like, oh, okay, what is going on here? Right. And you go to the doctor and there's nothing physically wrong with you. That's your first clue, is that when you go to the medical profession, you go to your doctor, they go to specialists. I've seen people go to all kinds of places and spaces, and they'll do every test under the sun, and they'll find that there's nothing like they can, clinically say, oh, this is what's wrong with you. Or they may misdiagnose you, and then you end up, a whole other mess. But the first thing is, it's like you can go to all these places and spaces, and there's like no answer, no clinical, physical answer. And then that's when people start seeking out the spiritual realms, because they're like, well, something's going on. Okay, something's going on. And that's what they call spiritual sickness. When you have some kind of illness or disease and there's no clinical diagnosis or clinical reason for it. Okay. And the next step, a lot of people step into this one, is that you have a dream. You have a dream. This is like the most ancient sign. Okay. You have a dream of ancestors and or spirits calling you to go to some sacred place, or calling you and showing you something. So like, for instance, I had a client one time where her grandmother came to her in a dream and showed her a place. It was a mountain. It was a very famous mountain, but she had no idea, because her grandmother was a Korean woman and she was brought up in America, and she had no idea what that place was. Come to find out that place is where shamans would go to be initiated into their path. And so that was a dream calling her to be a shaman. Okay. So sometimes they'll call you, they will show you something, they will tell you, but you have to like read, if you're just like, oh, I don't know, my grandmother came to me and, but the thing about that dream and why it was so unusual for her is because she kept having it. Like, she didn't get the message the first time. So the spirits were like, hello, hello, hello. Then on top of that, her health started to go woo, like really down. Like, she started getting anemic, very sick. She started just like losing interest in everything and everyone. She became very sick with like food. She couldn't eat. Like, there were very few things she could eat. And that was really hard, because then she was becoming weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker. And then by the time, I did her evaluation and I looked at her, I said, this is the spirits calling you. This is spirit. So you're going to either have to step into your path, or you're just going to keep on the decline. Right. And so there's two parts to it, though, because the spirit world can be calling you, but it's not time yet. Okay. And so you might just kind of be unsatisfied in your life. You might have these crazy dreams and you might be like, I don't understand what this means, but you're not quite at the point where you're ready to step into it. And the spirit world knows that it's not your time yet. So they'll kind of keep you in a loop. You'll just kind of be looping around. And in this looping around time, what you have to do is start meditating, start praying, start working with the energies and start understanding them. And then the spirit world will start bringing you things like they'll bring you a teacher. In this day and age, they'll bring you a TikTok live, they'll bring you things that will keep you going until you're ready to really, make that commitment. So in her circumstance, she was being called and her time was now. Her time was ready. And how we knew that was because she was having the dreams repeatedly. Then her health was going downtown, right? And then she was getting messages. Like she would be walking around and people would pass her and she would just see everything about that person. She would know things and it would scare her because she was like, oh my God, how do I know this about that person and that thing? And then she'd just start giving messages. See, that's when you're really ready, is when you can start giving messages to people and people look at you like, what in the heck? I was doing that at 3 years old. I see da 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 da. And so, but when it just suddenly turns on, for a lot of people, that's how it goes. For me, it happened in childhood, but for a lot of people, it happens later in their life. That means like you have no choice. You have no choice. When you start receiving messages and the spirit world is like itching, like you're itching to give those messages and they're always right, they're spot on, like people start crying or whatever, then that you have a gift and you have to share it. That's when you're really ready to go, is when you start looking at people start coming to you. It's a natural process. That's when the spirit world says, you know what, it's your time now. It's your time. And all you have to do is step into it. That's all you have to do, is to step into it. Because as you step into it, everything starts aligning for you. And the biggest thing is when you're starting to step into it is the imposter syndrome. This is something a lot of students tell me is, I don't feel like I know enough. I don't really, I haven't been doing it that long. I don't know if I'm doing this right, and that's why you need a teacher so they can help you with that. But a lot of people don't have teachers. They're just self-taught. This is just turning on. They don't know what to do. And so what I always advise for those situations is that you just keep doing it, because it takes like 10,000 people to really get like good with your gift. It also takes a lot of research, a lot of education. I'm a big proponent of learning about symbols, ancient history, ancient knowledge, your bloodline, who you came from, what your blood type is. A lot of people ignore the blood type thing, but the blood type thing is huge when it comes to spiritual gifts, because blood types will tell you what type of spiritual gifts you have, what you're good at, and why you're here, and who you walk with, if you know your blood type. That's why in Asia, the number one thing, thanks for the hands, let's go. The number one thing in Asia people ask, especially Korean society, is what's your blood type? Because they will start analyzing all kinds of stuff off your blood type. But in spiritual terms, we know a lot by blood types too. Yeah, the blood type thing that's part of my training. I don't give that out online, but yeah. When I ask students what their blood type is, and then I have a whole book on it. I have a whole thing I've written just about blood types. That's how important blood type is. Okay, so the dreams of the ancestors or the spirit world or places of initiation and power spots is huge. Okay, that's one sign and symbol, but not everybody will have that sign. Okay, another thing is that when you're in the dream time, you are getting messages from higher beings. So what we call teachers. Teachers will come. I talked a little bit about this in my last life. Teachers will come in the dream world and also in your reality, in your day-to-day life. People will come with messages and teachings and things that will help catapult you to the next level. And so when you are ready to really step into your gift, teachers will come. People will come out of the blue. Things will start to happen that are very out of the blue and very synchronistic and very odd or strange. because, usually you haven't had those things happen. I know in the new age, a lot of people talk about the repeating numbers and all that stuff, but we're going beyond that stuff. Repeating numbers and all that stuff is very basic. Everybody sees that stuff. Everybody knows about it. Everybody acknowledges it. But what I'm talking about is like specific teachings. And when you hear them, they hit you in a certain way and they're life changing. And these will either come in the dream time or they will come in your reality. It's like the first time I met this woman when I was first studying with my teacher, she sent me to this woman to buy this spray that she made. This woman, I don't know where she came from. I had to meet her in a parking lot because she lived far in the mountains and she just happened to be in the city that day. And she was like, yeah, sure. But she made this diamond spray. It was out of this world. I have never experienced a spray that was that powerful. You just spray it and everything, just the whole energy shift. It was made of diamonds, crushed diamonds. And I met her in the parking lot. And that day I had something was clogging my throat right here. And I couldn't speak well. And I didn't even say anything. I got out of my car. She looked at me and she said, there's something wrong with your throat. And I was like 19, 20. And I said, yeah, I can't talk, and I'm struggling to talk. And she goes, oh, no, let me help you with that. And she just went like this. That's all she did. She went like that over my face, like that. And I felt that thing just like that. I've never experienced that where it just, it's my first experience with that. And then I could talk, right? I looked at the lady and I was like, what the heck did you just do? Because I went to the doctor and the doctor had no idea what was wrong with me, told me to take some Advil. And this woman took one look at me, said, there's something wrong with your throat. And I asked her, I said, what did you just do? And she said, oh, that's called Reiki. Now, this is way back in the day when nobody knew what Reiki was. And I said, oh, what's that? What's Reiki? I don't know what that is. And she said, oh, it's an ancient Japanese technique for healing, for energy work, right? And I was like, oh, wow, I want to know what that is. And then she was gone. I never saw the woman again. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that these teachers, they come out of nowhere and then they give you something. They show you something. They show you a potential or spark within yourself that is life changing. So now, Reiki is everywhere, but I judge every Reiki experience from that lady. And I've never had a Reiki experience like that ever again, right? I've met, my teachers and stuff that can do that. But I mean, that just gave me the bar, okay? The bar of like, what is Reiki? Oh, Reiki is when you could just go like that and heal something. Okay? That's real Reiki. And so that's what I'm talking about. Spiritual teachers, they come out of nowhere. They show you something. They ignite something. They awaken something that is life-changing. 25 years later, I'm still talking about this lady, right? So also another thing that can happen, and this one is a tricky one. This is why you need to also see a therapist to get a proper diagnosis. But, we have ways to test this, is that you have psychosis, a spiritual psychosis. And, there's a lot of different angles to the spiritual psychosis. Sometimes it's a spiritual possession. So we have to know that. Sometimes it's a trickster spirit or spirit. Sometimes it's an ancestor thing. It just depends, right? But what kind of psychosis we're talking about is when you're on the edge or the fringe of reality and not on drugs, okay? You're not on drugs, but you're on the fringe of your reality. And this could be like spiritual, where you're seeing spirits, you're talking to spirits, you're on the fringe. And this is why you need a teacher when you're on the fringe, because when you're on the fringe, it feels like you're crazy. It feels like you're nuts. It feels like you are going insane. And this is why it's a tricky one, because it can also be either This is why I ask people. I did a video on TikTok one time and I was talking about this, but it was like 3 minutes. So one day I could do a longer video on it. But I met a young man who had psychosis, and his mother asked me to evaluate him to see if he was a shaman. She was a psychic, so she really felt like her son had a gift and he was a shaman. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll evaluate him. And when I met him, he didn't have the other signs of being a shaman. So I was kind of like, oh, there's something else going on here. And so when I did the full evaluation of him, I found out that he had a lot of trauma. And this is like intense trauma. And because of that trauma, he had like energies, or what they call like, spirits that had entered those trauma holes. And they were speaking to him. They were telling him to do things. But when you have true spiritual calling, like as a healer, these spirits will never be like possessing you like that. What they will do is they will call you, and you may be afraid of it. But what he was having was more like negative spirits, trickster spirits, pushing him and telling him things that weren't true. And that's the big difference. If he was really being called to the shamanic path, everything that the spirits would say would be healing, would be light, and would be for the highest good. It may not be the things you want to hear, but they would be for the highest good, and they would be right. They would be right. And so it was really funny because I did the clearing for him, and I told him, you're not being called to be a shaman. But what you do have to do is do the healing work now to maintain this clearing. Because if you don't do the healing work and you don't heal these traumas and these shadows, they will come back again. So have a great night. They'll come back again. And so I gave him a protocol, a regimen, a practice, and that was up to him to continue. But, what it more was that his mother wanted him to be a shaman. And, they were kind of disappointed that I said he wasn't. But he was relieved, but the mother was not. Because nobody wants to hear that they have to do work. Okay. That's the harsh reality of it, is that when you have trauma and you have unhealed wounds and you have things that you have to resolve within yourself, you need to do the healing work so that all that goes away. And it could be a process. It can take time, but it will be worth it. When we do that, then we can see clearly, and those voices went away. And people on the fringe sense each other. Maybe. I think the problem with when you're on the fringe is you are so sensitive to everything and everyone around you. And this is what the problem is that when it's possession, is that you will think everything is against you, or you will think that people are trying to come and harm you or do things to you, or you will have to do things to, get up, get ahead. That's what the trickster spirits are all about. They're the con spirits. And so they probably can. When you're in a deep psychosis, though, it's hard to see clearly. That's the fringe. When you're in a fringe, it's like you really don't want to interact with people. Most people who are in the fringe are trying to escape people. They're escaping reality. They don't want to be in reality because reality is too overwhelming for them. And that's why you need to do cleansing, protection, and evaluation. You need an evaluation. When you're on the fringe, you need an evaluation. You need somebody that you know, like, and trust, who has experience with this. And you need to keep looking until you find that person, because it might take a while to find the right person that you can open up to and who can accurately look at you and say, oh, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. And sometimes I'll look at somebody and know that the spirit world is calling, but I know it's not time yet. So I'll just kind of leave it there, because the spirits will do what they're going to do. Right. And when you're ready, like we talked about a few weeks ago, when you're ready, nothing will stop that. Nothing will stop it. I think the problem with shamanic lineages, though, is that maybe your grandma or your grandpa had it and they were able to embrace it because, like, in Korean culture, there was war, there was, a lot of stuff that stood in the way. There's a cultural thing, like, especially, in our culture in America, it's not something that you don't ever think about it like, oh, yeah, that's a career path, or, it's not part of the culture, right? And so a lot of times people miss their calling because they didn't have the right advice, they didn't meet the right teacher, they didn't, get the right training, and they missed it. And so it'll go to the next lineage. It'll go to the daughter or the son, and then if they miss it, then it'll go to the grandchildren. It keeps climbing, it keeps going, it keeps trying to look for the one. That's how the spirits work, until the one catches it and says, I think I'm supposed to do something with this. And they meet the right teacher. They meet the right person that will take them to the next levels. Yeah, that's what a spiritual if you want to do a spiritual evaluation, you have to book a spiritual training session for the first time, the first one, and we can go and see what the spirit world says. We're witches here. Yeah, that's what they called it in Europe, witches. In the East, and we called it different things, but it's similar. But it's a calling, right? And see, like with witches, though, I know a lot of witches that, from the old world, like from Europe, who their grandmother did it, their great grandmother, and it's just continued on. It's passed on, right? That's the way it's supposed to go. Is it's supposed to just keep passing on. But what we see here in America, in the Western world, is that it's broken. So maybe it was one generation back, maybe it was 2 generations back, maybe it was 10 generations back, but it's in broken pieces. And so in this day and age, it's like people are trying to put it back together. They're trying to piece it back in some ways. How do we know the messages are not coming from demonic spirits? That's why you need to, know what a trickster spirit is and what a helper spirit is. Okay, so a helper spirit is always there to help you, and you ask them for help. They don't just butt in. They don't butt in. But I don't believe in butting in, okay? Even that's the hardest thing about a shamanic path, is that we're trained, like, even if you see somebody who you can help, you can help them. You're like, gosh, I know I could do a ceremony and help them with that problem. And you can offer it. You could say, well, this is what I do. And they might look at you sideways. And they might say, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not into that. I'm this religion. I'm that. I don't believe in that. That's just wacko stuff. I don't believe in it. And you have to let it be. You just let it be. Because when people want your help, they will ask for it. It's the same thing with helper spirits. When helper spirits want to help you, they're ready to help you. They see, oh my gosh, you're suffering, I can help you, but they're so stubborn. They don't want the help. They don't believe in me. They haven't asked. That's why I would say, if you want helper spirits, you got to ask them. Say, please help me. And if you knew, like, your grandmother was a helper in your life, they're going to be a helper in spirit. So you already know that's a helper spirit. So some of the helper spirits, you already know who they are. Other helper spirits, you have so many of them, you just have to ask and see who shows up, and keep asking, keep doing the offerings. But helper spirits will come to you and they will assist. They won't do the work for you. They will assist you. They will help you. They will guide you. They will give you clues. They will give you messages and dreams. They will give you inspiration. And yeah, we could call it God. It's great spirit. We call it the great spirit, call it the great mystery, call it God, you call it Allah, whatever it is. But that's a helper, right? You're going to have a helper, somebody help you. So even when you're praying to God, you have to ask, right? So that's the same thing. Then if you're working with trickster spirits, we don't call them demonic spirits, we call them trickster spirits. They try to trick you because they don't have any power of their own. They're trying to use your power. They're vampires. And in this day and age, we have them everywhere. They're cons. Most people who are really good at conning others are filled with trickster spirits. They're people who work with these energies that teach them how to get ahead by lying, cheating, and stealing. That's how you know you're working with the trickster. They're going to talk fast. They're going to take your money. They're going to try to give you the fast, easy, cheap way to get ahead. When in reality, there's no fast, easy, cheap. There's no fast, easy, cheap. And in ancient traditions, there's never no fast, easy, cheap. To get real spiritual power, you have to earn it. Everything is earned. You don't just get it. It's not just given to you because you're so pretty or whatever. It's not like that. It's that you earned it through your merits, through your good hard work, through your kindness, through your compassion, through your love for others, through generosity, through values that you hold. And that value becomes valuable to society, and then therefore you are of service. Okay, that's the healing path. That's the ancient healing path. Is you don't just, you're not just given anything. Even when you have a gift, you have to work for that gift, because at any moment the gift can go away too. And that's what we see a lot of times when these people become very rich and famous and big time celebrities. A lot of times their gift will start fading and sometimes leave them. And then they have to struggle to get it back, because somewhere along the way they lost it. And it's because they're out of value, they're out of merit, they're out of integrity. Okay, so we have the dreams, we have the spiritual teachers, we have the mysterious illnesses, which are psychosis or fringe type things that I was talking about. Another one that a lot of people don't really know about, and when I talk about it, they're always like, really? I didn't know that was a sign, is that people start dying around you. Death can trigger spiritual gifts. So, a lot of people, when they're in resistance of their gift, they're getting all these other signs and symptoms, but they really don't want to step into it. Unfortunately, the spirit world will send dramatic things like that. That means like it's serious. When you start having a lot of people and pets die and you're having spiritual psychosis and spiritual symptoms and stuff, it means the only way to go forward is you got to commit to your spiritual path. You have to commit to service. And then all that goes away. There's a really famous Korean shaman. He was a famous movie star. And the spirit world was calling him, and he had all these other symptoms, but he's a famous movie star. Can you imagine you're a famous movie star and then the spirits are calling you to be a shaman? Oh, geez. So he was obviously in resistance of it. And he got to the point where like everybody was dying. He lost his wife, he lost his son, he lost, I think, a couple other people. And he finally accepted his mission. He finally accepted his gift, and he got initiated, and he's really famous now. He's a very famous shaman, and they said he's like 99% accurate in what he says. He's so good. And that kind of person, the spirit world would call him because of his fame and because of where he already is in his life, because now he can hit that world stage much more easily than somebody starting at the bottom, because he was already really connected, really famous, really this. And so spirit uses that person to get messages out and to heal more people, because he's in that position already. So spirit will call everybody to the table, rich, poor, black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. Spirit will call everybody, but there's certain people they will call because they know that person will hit the world stage and have a bigger voice. So that's one experience. So, and I hear that a lot from people. They'll be like, in 1 year, this person died out, and it's a succession of people, and then they're having a spiritual awakening. It's time for their gifts to come on board. It's time for them to open the door. And it's not like, like you killed the people, because it kind of sounds really morbid, right? That, all the stuff, my gift is awakening, so all these people have to die. it's like a contract thing. It's something in your destiny. It's part of the awakening process. There's something that happens, I talked about in my last Spot Live, when people die, especially mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, elders in your family. And if you're the healer in the family, they will pass on their power to you. And so that's kind of why it is too that way. Like when people really close to you and they have spiritual light and power, and also they will now become spiritual helpers that will be able to do much more in the spirit world for you than in the material world. So it's not a morbid thing. And I think a lot of the reason why people don't understand ancient indigenous and shamanic cultures is because of the cultural lens. See, in our society, we are mostly Judeo-Christian, and it's a whole different paradigm than indigenous shamanic cultures. It's a whole different everything. Everything is different. In a shamanic lens, we don't have just a heaven or hell. And it's not a what you believe thing. It's more about what you worked for in your life and lifetimes. And it's a whole other cosmology that we have to step into, and even to understand this whole other spiritual world. And this is the old world. So a lot of times when we're practicing the indigenous ways, we always say, I practice the old ways, because the old ways is where we have to understand. And that's why we do need to know the languages, we need to know the cultures, we need to know the rituals, we need to know the ceremonies, we need to know how to communicate properly in order to develop and grow our gifts to their maximum capacity. And that's part of what I was talking about earlier with the blood thing, is you have to know your blood. You have to know your blood type, but you also have to know what your lineages are, what's inside of you. That's part of knowing thyself. And that's a whole process that you go through when you're going through a spiritual awakening. Okay, so another symptom is people often unfortunately have misfortune. Everything just starts going spiritual awakening, you know what I'm talking about, where everything in the material world starts collapsing. You lose your job, you lose your friends, you have to move, I don't know. Something happens where in the material world, you can't focus there anymore. This frees up your time for the spiritual world. That's what's happening, is the material world will change. And a lot of people call it misfortune or bad luck. But what's really happening is that you're being recalibrated, reset, so that your material stuff falls, so that the spiritual mind can now enter. And that's common. That's just why in a true shamanic path, in a true indigenous path, the healers aren't meant to be like rich and famous. You're not supposed to be poor either. That's the misconception. Because when you're poor, you're only focused on survival, right? And in true traditional society, the community was supposed to support you, and healers were well taken care of. But, in this day and age, traditional healers are really struggling because they have to work and they have to do these healings. And, I had a really good teacher and mentor. He died at a very young age because he had to work a full-time job. And then outside of his Hogan 3 a.m., he had a long line of people all looking for healing and nobody paid. And so I learned a lot from that experience, is that when you're a healer, you can't be too poor, but you also can't be too rich, because I've seen that too. You have to be somewhere in the middle of it. And that's the balance that you have to find in this lifetime, is how to balance your giving and receiving, so that you're not all the way this way and you're not all the way that way, because that's way out of balance and you can't focus on your work. But you're supposed to be somewhere in that middle range where your needs are taken care of, but you're also not like greedy and trying to get more, because you're still of service to people. And so that's why you have to do your service. You still have to remain on the earth, right? You can't get to it in the sky. And so when you're going through a spiritual awakening or a spiritual calling, a lot of times that's what will happen is the material becomes backseat so the spiritual can rise. And I think part of that too is when you have spiritual sickness and when you're not feeling good and you don't know why, you almost have to give up work and things, right? Because now you're living on spirit. You're being retrained from the bottom up. You have to live on spirit, and you have to understand the laws of the universe that the spirit world will provide for you. That, if you say God, God will provide. Great mystery, great spirit, whatever you believe in, that will provide. And it will. It always does. Another thing that will happen is just your gifts start turning on. Your hands will get warm. You'll touch somebody and they're like, whoa, what is that? You'll be like that lady. Just, you will have things happen. You will turn things on. Things will start awakening within you. You'll start tingling. You'll start vibrating. A really good sign of a healer is when people want to be around you. I know all you empaths are like, no, get away from me. But when you're a fully healed, let's call it a healed healer, you don't mind it. People will want to be around you. They will want to talk to you. They will just want to stick around you. They will want to just be in your light. They'll just want to be in your light. Animals will want to be in your light. Babies, kids, oh my gosh, kids are the biggest one. They'll always be following you around, hanging all over you. That's a telltale sign. Like there's something going on in your aura that people want to be in it. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. People want to be in it because you have that healing ability that's turning on and they can feel it and it's radiating. It's radiating into the atmosphere and people are drawn to it. Yeah, shine bright. Yeah, you're shining bright. And everybody's like, ooh, what's that shiny light? That's part of it. Oh, good night, Red Diddy. Thanks for joining. Okay, so we have a few more. The other ones are people coming out of nowhere asking for help. I know a lot of you are like, yep, you're probably checking these boxes, right? Yeah, people coming out of nowhere. Meeting a life-changing person. That's the destiny part. Meeting your teacher, meeting the person who is going to change your life. Because that person, when you meet them, will take you down the rabbit hole. They'll take you down to the world, to the underworld, to the upper world, to all the worlds. And they will show you and activate things within you that you never knew you could have. That's the destiny part. That's the luck part. That's the part a lot of grandmothers, grandfathers, great aunts, whatever, didn't have. That's the part. When you have that person, not only when you have that person come in, is when you recognize that. Because that person could have been there the whole time and you just didn't see it. It's like when my first teacher came into my life, I was like hitting the snooze button. I was snoozing because it was through a coworker. She kept pushing this thing on me. She was like, there's this lady on the radio. I really want to get a reading. She was on the radio doing readings. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. I was in college and I was like, yeah, whatever. It wasn't of interest to me. I was always into spiritual stuff and all that stuff, but I wasn't really that interested. And she kept bugging me. And she's like, she's going to do this seminar. We should go. And she kept bugging and bugging. I was like, okay, we'll go. Geez. And then when I met her, I wasn't like anything like, whoa, it was my teacher. It wasn't like that. No, it was more like I was listening to what she was saying. She was doing group reading, whatever. And sorry, my cat's back. Pinky's back. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's interesting. But it was at the end, my friend again, she was like, let's go talk to her. It's like, oh my gosh. And she had a long line of people trying to talk to her. And so I was like, okay. And so we went over there and she told her something and she told me something. And And she was glowing after. She's like, oh my gosh, because she told her, you're going to be a lawyer. And she actually did become a lawyer. But for me, I don't remember what she said. It wasn't like life-changing, but it was the first meeting. And I was like, yeah, that was kind of interesting. And what she told me was right. I think I was the last person that she saw too. So she just had this long line and she was just giving quick little things. And that woman, my friend, she kept pushing me like, let's book a session. And I was like, okay, at that time I was into other stuff. And I'm like, okay, we could book a session. And but at that time, it was like 3 or 4 months to get a session. This is how the spirit world works. It was 3 or 4 months later. And before that 3 to 4 months, I had 3 crazy experiences happen that were life-changing moments that, like, to this day changed my life. And when I went for my session, she put it all together. The first thing she told me is, you're a shaman. And that was like, what? I don't even think I knew the word. And then she was like, she just went into everything. And that was the life-changing moment. That was a life-changing moment. And then at that moment, here's the opportunity and destiny, is that she was offering meditation classes, the exact type of meditation classes that I needed. And not only that, she offered all this other stuff that was shamanic. And so she ended up being my first teacher. But when I first met her, I didn't recognize that. I didn't know that. But it was through life experiences, and that I had to wait like 3-4 months to see her because I wasn't ready at the time that I met her. But by the time my session came, I was ready. That's how the spirit world works, is that they will call you to the path, but they will know that you need certain experiences to happen before you will really be ready for the path. So that's what teachers are, is that you may meet your teacher a year or 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, doesn't matter, before you're ready. But the spirit world knows you will be ready one day. There's the hope. That's destiny. Now you have free will and you could say, I don't want that path. No. And I have seen that. I've seen that. One time I sat with a woman and I told her, you're supposed to be a shaman. She goes, man, let me psychic. I said, what says that? She said, everybody she sits with says that. I was like, yeah, I know, because you're supposed to be a shaman. And she said that everybody has told her that. She even went so far as to pull out $10,000 from her bank account. This is in Korea. She was going to do this shaman ceremony. And she backed off. She went to the door and she couldn't knock and she ran away. And after that, her life was miserable. And I told her, yeah, that's because you didn't accept your destiny. See, what happens is that your free will says, okay, here's my, your destiny calls you. And then your free will says, I don't want that. That's not my plan. I want to be a whatever. And like her, she wanted to be a teacher. And she was a teacher, but she struggled. She lost her daughter. She lost all her money. She just kept having that one symptom of misfortune until a certain age. And I told her that. I said, well, when you're 61, all that will go away because the spirit world won't call you anymore. They're going to go to your daughter now. But she was like, yeah, I know, because I just passed 61 and now all my fortune's back. My business is booming. Like everything went up again. And she said every reader told her that too, because what we do in readings is just read your destiny. That's all it is. We can read your destiny and you choose do I want to embrace and accept and step into my destiny, or am I going to run away? And that's free will. Okay. So the next one we talked about the teacher. This other symptom is an overwhelming desire to serve others. There's just like this overwhelming desire. And I've heard it a lot from clients over the years. Where they'll say, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to do stuff. I'm supposed to, do something greater than what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? You're called to serve. And you may not know what the service is because it's not the time yet, but you know you're called to it. It's something greater. It's like, I really want to help people, but I know it's not in a traditional way. It's not like, being a counselor or a teacher or a doctor or whatever. It's something spiritual. There's something spiritual, but I don't know. I have to develop it. I have to grow it. But I feel this overwhelming urge to serve other people. That's the best symptom, though, because a lot of people come to me and they want to be a shaman from their ego, which is so funny to me because in my culture, nobody wants to be a shaman. Nobody wants to be the medicine person. Okay. Nobody wants that responsibility. It's something that is chosen for you. You don't choose it. But in this modern day, a lot of people say, well, I want to be that. I want to do that. And it's because they don't know what it is. They don't understand it. But people who know and understand what it is, we don't want it. we spend many years trying to run away from it. But people who don't understand it and they're coming from their ego, they want that. And that's the one question I'll ask them is, do you really want to help people? Do you want to serve, or do you just want the spiritual power? And that will tell me everything. And that's the people I work with, are the people who really want to serve and help people. And they are willing to do the work to be of great service to others. That's the best symptom. That's the best sign, because you may not have, much, but if you have that will take you far on a spiritual path. That will take you very far, because that's your generous, giving heart that really wants to help others and is willing to do the work to do it. That's what a great healer is. And the other ones, let's see. Oh, and part of that is sacrificing your life for greater good. Sorry, I have to move my screen here, and I got my cat. The last two signs we're going to go through real quick is having a strong empathic sense where you feel others. So that's, empaths will have that, but that's a really clear sign too, is when you're around people and you feel their pain, you feel everything they're going through, you feel it. And like we talked about a few weeks ago, then if you have that, you have to learn how to transmute. That becomes really important. Empaths all have to learn how to transmute energy so that they're not drained and tired. And the last one that I talk about is visiting a power place and then having a sudden awakening that leads you down to a spiritual path. So I have a really good example of that. I had a friend who I met, and she came to visit me, and she told me her story of how she became, I don't even know what she called herself, but she was a land healer. I call her a portal opener because that girl could open portals. She was something, but with land. So she could see and recognize power spots, and she could open them and work with them and close them and stuff. But she was in Costa Rica, and she was on a boat. She was a principal. Imagine, she's a principal on a boat with her father on a vacation. Saw this huge portal of energy, like a swirling, like a hurricane, but nobody else saw it. And it was all different colors and shapes and whatever. And it was a life-changing thing. She saw it. And then when she came home, she started having all those other symptoms. She started, her relationship fell apart. She quit her job. She saw this energy everywhere she went. She was on the fringe of insanity, sanity. She went through all those symptoms I just talked about until she realized that she was called to work with the land, and that was her destiny, and that she was supposed to do land healings and clearings and open businesses and all this other stuff. And that's what she ended up doing. And that was her awakening. So those are the signs and symptoms that I talk about on my website for the spiritual training. And you can look at that if you want to go deeper into it. But I wanted to open the floor for questions, and then I'm going to jump off. And I want to say hello to everybody on YouTube. I just saw everybody over there. Hello, April. Hi, Sylvia. Hi, Sweet Pea. Hi, everybody here. Let me go back into some of these comments. Okay. Discernment. Yeah. So when you're working with the spirits, always have discernment. When you're working with people, when you're working with spirits, when you're working with land, you always have to have discernment. See, this is why I like the Buddhist teachings, because Buddha said, question everything, including him. Don't just take what I say, go question it, go research it, go find out for yourself and see if it resonates, because that's how you will know if it's for you or not. It's the same thing like with teachers. You go with the one that feels right. Go with the one that calls you. You go with the one that you have a connection with. It's a spiritual thing. That's why I always kind of laugh about this social media stuff, because everybody's trying to get something. They're all trying to be grabby and get it. But ultimately, when you're talking about something like spirituality and sacredness, it's not a grabby get something thing. It's a resonance thing. It's in the heart. It's like finding a soulmate. When you find your teacher, it's the grandest soulmate, because they will be the one to take you to the next levels. They will help you tap into places in your being that you didn't even know existed. It's beyond something you can learn, because there's nothing a teacher really can teach you. But what a good teacher does is it just awakens something within you and takes it to levels that you wouldn't have had previously had you not met your teacher. And in our traditions, we don't teacher mix. It's really hard in this day and age, because you're on TikTok and YouTube and whatever. But when you find your teacher, you just kind of stick with that teacher for a while, at least, for a designated amount of time, whatever you contract. So if your teacher says, okay, come to my meditation classes for a month, then you just go to those meditation classes for a month. If you decide to do deeper trainings, then you commit to that, and you don't go to other teachers, you don't go to other healers, you don't go, mixing around. And the reason for that is because when you start mixing stuff, you start self-sabotaging and you start getting confused. And we call it getting in knots. You get all knotted up. And at some point, when you're so knotted up, because every teacher will say something different and they will present things differently. And some are working with other types of spirits that may not get along with this. It's a really complicated thing. But when you start mixing it all together, the medicine becomes impure. And now you're going to be confused and in chaos, and who knows what's going on in the spiritual realms. So we always say, try to keep it pure. That doesn't mean you're only going to study with one person for the rest of your life, although some people do. It just means that for that designated time that you're studying with this teacher, just try to absorb and digest and understand those teachings to their fullest capacities before you start incorporating and going in all those other directions. Go one step at a time. And that's why I'm really glad I did all my spiritual training before the internet. Before all this, because I didn't know any better. I never went from this person to that person. I went one at a time. When I graduated from my first teacher, she handed me over to the next level. And then she knew, okay, this is as far as we can go with me. So here, I'm going to introduce you now to the next level. And this is the person, and this is the medicine that's going to take you to that next level. And then from there, it all starts unfolding. It starts unraveling. That's how it goes. One step at a time. And that's the same guidance I give for readings. Get one reading, sit on it for a couple months, then get another reading. Don't go reading hopping, which is so easy to do, especially here. And, don't do that. If you want a good reading, invest into a good reading and sit on that reading and get your money's worth. Okay? Get your money's worth. Don't do the cheap and easy. Because if you really want a real reading, you got to invest. You have to invest. You have to invest your time and you have to invest your money, and then you'll get what you pay for. You'll get it. Because spirit world wants you to get the best advice, but you have to pay and you have to invest your time and money, and that's your currency and that's your exchange. And then the other person, the person giving you their reading, their time and their energy and their expertise, they will give it to you fully and completely. And that's the exchange. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, everybody, tonight. And I will be back on next Monday at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you want to watch the replay, it's on YouTube. Every replay in my on Meditation Monday is on YouTube, so you can watch that. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Many blessings. Until we meet again.